G'day everyone, how's it going? This is Big Pup, and I'm back at you with some more Master League content. Today's a pretty special video that I've been wanting to make for a long time. It's the triple Shundo video. So this team consists of a Shundo Hydregion I got from a lucky trade, a Shundo Heatran that I got from a raid, and a Shundo Metagross that I got from another lucky trade. I definitely don't recommend this team for climbing. It has a lot of vulnerabilities, mainly Kyogre. Like, Kyogre is a nightmare for this team. But if you run into a Mewtwo on the lead and there's like a Giratina or a Lugia, you're in business. Anyway, jumping into the battles, we have the Hydreigon just taking out the Mewtwo. They send in a Dialga and then switch into a Giratina. So we're in a pretty bad matchup here. We're taking super effective from the Shadow Claws and we fear both the Ominous Wind and the Shadow Ball. We're assuming they're not running Dragon Pulse just because not too many Giratinas are running Dragon Pulse. In comes the Shadow Ball, we sack the Metagross, saving the shields. In comes Hydreigon, we have good energy. Down goes Giratina, we have another Brutal String, ready, waiting for that Dialga. In comes Hydreigon, swings into that Dialga. Down goes Hydreigon, and now we have a great matchup in the back. Good game to my opponent. Keeping things moving here, we have the Shundo Hydreigon into a Groudon. This is pretty good for us. If we're going to see a Groudon anywhere, we want to see it on the lead. Groudon definitely dominates our backline, and they make a switch into Dialga. This is honestly such a good moment for us. Definitely the opponent just helped us get the dub here, because this is great. We can switch in with the Heatran and dominate this Dialga. We're at a few Magma Storms here. We're going to just start throwing them. We wanted to take that Draco Meteor, so we're on low health, and then we can farm all the way down. We have 2 Magma Storms loaded. We're going to start unleashing these Magma Storms onto the Groudon and grab shields or deal some pretty good damage. In comes Magma Storm number 1. That does some damage. Now we're going to throw the second one. Hopefully this grabs a shield. That'll be very advantageous. Grabs the shield and down goes Heatran. We come back in here with Hydreigon. We don't really want to come in with Metagross. Obviously the Mudshots and the Precious Blades and the Fire Punches absolutely decimate a Metagross, but they switch into a Shadow Gardevoir. Good game to my opponent. Keeping things moving here, we have the Shundo Hydreigon into a Dialga. This is a really bad matchup. We're taking super effective from the Dragon Breaths. They're only taking neutral because of the steel typing. So we retreat into our Metagross. By the way, how are you guys going? How's everyone doing in the Master League? Or what's the other cup? Is it the Fantasy Cup? Let me know what you're playing at the moment and what team you're running. I've been trying out a few different teams. I actually have a really interesting video coming up after this one. I level 50'd a 100% IV Shadow Hitmonchan. So I'm going to do a 100% Shadow IV Rhyhorn, Rhyperior with a 100% Shadow IV Hitmonchan. So get excited for that. Anyway, jumping back into the video, our Metagross is Dragon Breath down. We send in Hydreigon, they send him back in the Groudon. We're at a Flash Cannon, but most likely we will shield here and then just start offloading these Brutal Swings. In comes Brutal Swing number 1. I love that they gave Brutal Swing to Hydreigon, such a huge improvement. I just picture Hydreigon with like 2 baseball bats and like either like mouth, or I was going to say arm, but they're little heads, aren't they? So I can picture like Hydreigon with like 2 baseball bats in either hand just swinging. Anyway, my imagination goes different places sometimes. Anyway, they come in with a purified Apex Lugia. That's great for us. Our Heatran does great against that thing. We don't fall for the switch in with the Dialga, and now we have loads of energy. All we really need to do here is throw the 2 Stone Edges, because one of them's going to grab a shield and one of them is going to do some devastating damage onto that Johto Legendary. In comes Stone Edge number 1 that grabs the shield. We get to the second Stone Edge. This will be getting Lugia into the very, very low red. We're fire spinning away and we should be able to polish off the match. This Sky Attack will take out the Heatran, but they're not at 2 moves and Hydreigon has plenty of health left, so we should be able to take the dub. Good game to my opponent. Keeping things moving here, we have the Hydreigon into a Kyogre. So this is really brilliant. As the same with Groudon, we want to see Kyogre on the lead because our backline gets absolutely dominated by Kyogre and Groudon. Anyway, we're going to shield up here. It's just the Surf. Just because I want to preserve as much health on Hydreigon as possible, I really just want to get this Kyogre out the way and I have an opportunity to get this matchup over and done with and come out with energy. We throw the first Brutal Swing. We have another one loaded in the back. We're not going to submit 2 shields to the Kyogre. Now we should be in a position to pretty much farm all the way down. We managed the complete farm down. We're at 2 Brutal Swings. In comes the Dialga, and we're going to start swinging. In comes the first Brutal Swing that grabs the shield. We fortunately get to the second Brutal Swing. This should be doing a good amount of chip damage. Does a nice little bit of chip damage. And now we can come in with either, to be honest. Probably going to come in with heatran because these fire spins are doing some pretty solid neutral damage. And I love this matchup. The bullet punches from the metagross would have been doing resisted, so good decision bringing in the heatran. We absorb that meteor mash like an absolute tank. And what do they switch into? I didn't quite see. I think it's a Yveltal. No, it's a Giratina. So we get that first Stone Edge off. That's really good for us. We get to the second Stone Edge. That's super clutch. Heatran has a great attack stat and a great defense stat. So it's definitely one of those Pokemon that I'd recommend investing in for the Master League. Anyway, we got the dub. Moving into the next match, we have Hydreigon into Lugia. This really isn't a good matchup for us. Those Dragon Tails are absolutely shredding the Hydreigon, so we retreat into Metagross, and the opponent retreats into a fellow Metagross. Good to see another Metagross in the Master League. It's such a staple. It's such a classic Pokemon. I'd definitely say it's the best pseudo-legendary of Hoenn, and I'd even say possibly the best pseudo-legendary of all the regions. Funnily enough, probably my second favorite pseudo-legendary would be Hydreigon. I've loved Hydreigon since it came out. I was always fascinated by it. Back in primary school, I was following all the leaks for like the new Pokemon coming out in black and white, and I was so excited when I saw Hydreigon. Anyway, we let Metagross go down. Unfortunately, they throw the Earthquake, but we get to the Brutal Swing, and this will be taking out the Metagross. In comes Brutal Swing. Goodbye, Metagross. We switch back into Lugia. We do not want to let Lugia farm up a bunch of energy by Dragon Tailing our Hydreigon, and they have a Yveltal in the back. This is pretty fortunate for us. I mean, like, this is a great team for taking down a double flyer team, but we do need to watch the Focus Blast from Yveltal because they will absolutely just destroy Heatran. Anyway, in comes the Stone Edge, down goes Yveltal. Now we get to another Stone Edge, but we're going to overfarm a bit more energy. We're about 1.5 Stone Edges worth of energy, and we throw. In comes the first Stone Edge. That does a brilliant amount of damage. All we really need to do now is throw a Magma Storm, and then we can farm down. In comes the first Magma Storm. Does a decent amount of damage. We catch onto the Hydreigon. It was a pretty unnecessary catch, but it was a bit of fun. It's the Aeroblast. Down goes Hydreigon, and Heatran can come in and finish the show. Good game to my opponent. Anyway, keeping things moving here, we have Hydreigon into a Garchomp. So this can be a good matchup. Unfortunately, this is the bad situation because they're running Dragon Tail. Ideally, you'd want them to be running Mudshot because then you can just shred them with the Dragon Breaths and they do very little damage with the Mudshots. Anyway, they try and farm all the way down. We beat them to it. In comes Dialga, and unfortunately, they take us out before we get to a Brutal Swing. Not to worry though, because we have two absolute champions in the back that can... This team is built to take down Dialga. I mean, Hydreigon's very susceptible, but Heatran and Metagross, Dialga does not want to see those two. They come in with Mewtwo. We don't really mind this. I'm assuming they're not running Focus Blast, to be honest. Most Mewtwo's I'm seeing are running Psystrike and Shadow Ball. Even I've seen a few running Ice Beam, which would still be good for this team. It's just the Psystrike. We absorb that and we throw the Magma Storm. I know I've said this in my previous videos, but I am so stoked that they gave Heatran Magma Storm. And then the Fire Spin buff, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Giving one of my favorite legendaries some serious love. We're experiencing some lag. The Magma Storm finally comes through. I love that animation too, so sexy. Anyway, down goes Mewtwo. We're expecting the Dialga to come in. We switch into Metagross, and good game to my opponent. I think they've done that thing where they back out, they force close the app, so it just kind of like freezes the game. Not so bad when you're not recording, but can be a bit of a muck around when you're recording for a YouTube video. Good game to the opponent. Anyway, moving into the next match, we have Hydreigon into Dialga. This is another bad lead. We did not want to see this. We retreat into Metagross, just like the earlier matches, and we'll see what they counter swap into. It's a Mewtwo, which isn't the best. I mean, we are very threatened by the Shadow Balls. One Shadow Ball pretty much one-shot KOs a Metagross. So we correctly shield up the Shadow Ball, and now we're going to start throwing a few Meteor Mashes. Ideally, I'd like to grab a few shields in this matchup, and I would like to win Switch, but we'll see how I play this. I throw the second Meteor Mash. This will pretty much be taking out the Mewtwo if they choose to no shield. One more Meteor Mash. Goodbye, Mewtwo. Into the Shadow Realm. They switch into I think that's a level 50 Shadow Tyranitar, so it's super spicy to see. I actually have one of those myself, so let me know in the comments if you'd love to see a level 51 Shadow Tyranitar video. I've been hella tempted to make a video, but I've just been holding off a little bit. I feel like it's a tricky one to like maneuver in the Master League, but I'd love to give it a go. They switch into Dialga. Unfortunately, they catch the Meteor Mash, but unfortunately for them, we have the Magma Volcano Cockroach in the back. Just says, "Come here, Dialga, let me cook." Heatran absolutely eats Dialga. I love it. In comes Draco Meteor. we take that like an absolute champion, and we're not going to try and farm down here just because I was just maybe expecting them to get to a Iron Head. So we throw the Magma Storm just to be safe. That takes down Dialga. Now we throw another Magma Storm into the Tyranitar. Good game to my opponent. Keeping things moving here. Oh yeah, I know some of you said you want proof of the set, so here's a 5-0 that I just got with that team, so I was pretty stoked with that. I had mixed results. I had like an 0-5, and then I had a 5-0, and then in the last set I had like a 2-3, but the losses were so close. You'll see coming up. Anyway, we have a Hydreigon into Mewtwo. This is the absolute piece to the wrist. It's the absolute dream lead. I was trying to say that piece to the resistance, but I kind of got my words mixed up. Anyway, they retreat into a Ho-Oh, and I really don't mind this. We're resisting the Incinerates, and I love versing a Ho-Oh because I can time the moves really well. Incinerate's one of those fast moves that's really easy to time, so I do not mind this whatsoever. In comes the Sacred Fire, we shield that up. Unfortunately for them, they get no debuff, so we carry on Brutal Swinging. In comes the first Brutal Swing, that takes down the Ho-Oh. We have enough energy to get to another Brutal Swing onto this Zekrom, which is really good for us. Neither of our backline really want to see a Zekrom. I mean, I don't really know what the common moveset for a Zekrom is these days. It's probably Fusion Bolt and Crunch, so obviously this Metagross does not want to see a Crunch or a Fusion Bolt, to be honest. In comes Fusion Bolt, does a pretty good amount of damage. They have 2 shields, so it's not looking too good, but we'll carry on. In comes the first Meteor Mash. That luckily grabs a shield. We're trying to do some damage, but they're just resisting these bullet punches. Zekrom is one of the best Pokemon in the Master League, such a powerful closer. You know, such great coverage, great bulk, and if you're not versing a Dialga, you're in a pretty good position. They retreat back into the Mewtwo. I don't think Heatran has enough health here. We're going to throw up the shield here and try and farm up to a few Magma Storms. We're at 2 Magma Storms here, so we'll have to throw one to grab the shield, and then another to take out the Mewtwo, and then maybe we can farm down. In comes the first Magma Storm that grabs the shield. In comes the second Magma Storm. Can this do it? Come on, Heatran, you good thing. 1, 2, unfortunately not. In comes the Fusion Bolt. Down goes Heatran. Good game to the opponent. Moseying on into the next match, we have Hydreigon into a Garchomp. So let's see, flip a coin, and it's a Mudshot variant. That is absolutely wonderful for us. We're Dragon Breathing away. Look at the damage. Look at the discrepancy. This is fantastic. In comes the Outrage. We correctly shield that. That would have absolutely devastated our Hydreigon, and luckily for us, they switch into a Kyogre. So they probably don't know, but this is exactly what I want. We're resisting the waterfalls and surfs, and I just want this whale gone. In comes the Surf, I believe. We tank the Surf like an absolute champion. We're almost at 2 Brutal Swings, which is really good. 1 Brutal Swing possibly grabs the shield, and 1 finishes the job. Let's see the result. In comes the first Brutal Swing that grabs the shield. We get to the second Brutal Swing, shields are down, so Hydreigon goes to town, and that takes out the Kyogre with a few more Dragon Breaths. What's going to come in next? We're on a sliver of health. It is a Zarude. We have Heatran in the back. Heatran absolutely dominates the Zarude. They switch into Garchomp, and we have a pretty alright matchup in the back. We have a shield to shield up the Earth Power. That would have done a lot of damage. Can we get to the Bullet Punch? We get to the Bullet Punch. That pretty much secures the game, because Heatran has a very favourable matchup in the back against Zarude. Not to mention these Bullet Punches are really adding up. I just don't think it has the bulk to survive. It's probably going to be a Dark Pulse. I think we might hang on with a Sliver. Metagross's bulk is just so good. I'm so glad I have a good Metagross. It's another one of those Pokemon that I was searching for literal years, and I just couldn't get a good one. Anyway, Zarude's on a very low amount of health. A few Fire Spin should finish us off. In comes a Dark Pulse. I'm really not worried. We absorb the Dark Pulse. We get to the Magma Storm, and that should be a good game. In comes Magma Storm. Sick animation. Good game. Keeping things moving here, we have the Hydreigon into a Metagross, and a Shadow Metagross at that, a level 50 Shadow Metagross. That is very spicy. Love to see it. They switch into a Groudon. This is really good for us. We're just going to stay in here because we don't have a favorable matchup in either of our back Pokemon. In comes the Precipice Blades, so that's good. We shielded that up, and now we're at 2.5 or 2 Brutal Swings. In comes the first Brutal Swing that almost takes down the Groudon. We shield up here, but in retrospect, I shouldn't have shielded. Just the Fire Punch, we would have resisted that. But you live and you learn. We're 2 shields down. But to even things out, we have 2 Brutal Swings ready to go. In comes the first Brutal Swing. They shield that. In comes the second Brutal Swing. Will this grab a shield? If it doesn't, it'll decimate the Metagross. In comes the Brutal Swing. Does a great amount of damage. And now we will let the Hydreigon go down. Down goes Hydreigon. We'll probably come in with the Heatran doing super effective fire spins. It's a Kyogre in the back, unfortunately. Kyogre's pretty much checkmate for this team. There's not much else you can do against the Kyogre unless shields are down. And unfortunately, oh, they just are down now. Let's see what we can do. We're going to try and get to the Earthquake. These surfs do add up. I mean, like the surfs do a lot of damage, I'm not going to lie, just for being neutral damage. In comes the second surf. Unfortunately, maybe if we got to the Earthquake, we could have got the dub here, but we back out. Good game to my opponent. Keeping things moving along here, we have the Hydreigon into a Mewtwo. So this is the Dream Lead, as I said before. Absolutely brilliant. They have a counter to Hydreigon and Togekiss, but we have Metagross lurking in the back. Metagross is an absolute bully to Togekiss. I mean, a bully. I'm not sure if it's going to be Aura Sphere. I know Shield expecting an Aura Sphere. They surprised me with the Flamethrower, but that's all good. We have two Meteor Mashes loaded in the back, and we have another Heatran, which Heatran is probably the best counter for Togekiss in the whole meta. I mean, it pretty much resists all its move. It got a little bit worse since it got Aura Sphere, but the charms are just completely resisted with that Steel and Fire typing, which is so good. Back comes in Mewtwo. We're up 2 shields now, so we're in an absolutely fantastic position. We're going to start throwing off Magma Storms and dealing some damage to Mewtwo. We throw one Magma Storm, switch into Hydreigon. They send in a Dialga. We get to a Brutal Swing. We're in a great position here. In comes Brutal Swing. Does a pretty decent chunk of damage. We're still up 2 shields, and they throw energy. They probably should have just farmed down there. They probably would have gotten to the farm down, but they throw the Iron Head, further cementing our brilliant position here. We throw a Magma Storm. This will be taking out the Dialga, and then one more Magma Storm, and that should be a good game. Keeping things moving here, we have Hydreigon into a Dialga, so this is a pretty bad lead. You do not want to see a Dialga. We retreat into Metagross, as seen in previous matches, and unfortunately, they have a Kyogre. This will be a really tough one. We do not shield here. We're going to try and build up to 2 Meteor Mashes, I think. In comes the first surf. We build up to 2 Meteor Mashes. We're going to start throwing these Meteor Mashes. Ideally, I'd like to grab some shields. I'd love to get some shields down. Unfortunately, they're smarter than that. And we don't get to the second Meteor Mash, which is a really big hindrance. That puts us in a really bad position. We're going to no-shield here. We definitely need to save shields. I'm hoping I can farm this Kyogre all the way down and come out with lots of energy. Unfortunately, we do not get the farm down, which is pretty bad for us. We absorb the surf. Now we get the farm down, and we're just going to have to auto-switch into Heatran. Save the Brutal Swings for whatever's in the back, because Dialga will shred Hydreigon way too fast. They switch into a Mewtwo, which is pretty good for us. We resist the Psycho Cuts and the Psy Strikes. Now we just have to hope we don't get hit with a Shadow Ball. We decide to no-shield. We get hit with a Shadow Ball. You reach, you teach. Unfortunately, we reached. But we will start to get to these Magma Storms. I'm hoping, because we resist the Psycho Cuts so much, that I am able to get to a few Magma Storms and somehow pull off a win. In comes the second Psy Strike. We have to shield that up because we're on just low health, even though we resist it. And plus, Mewtwo is an absolute god. Those Psy Strikes hit anything in the meta super duper hard. We're fire spinning away trying to build up some energy. They're going to throw another Psy Strike. They don't need to throw the Shadow Balls at this point. We switch into Hydreigon and we start throwing off these Brutal Swings. Unfortunately, they switch into Dialga, so these Dragon Breaths will take us out real quick. Hopefully we get to 2. Unfortunately, we don't get to 2. We come back in with the Heatran. We start throwing these Magma Storms. Hopefully, this takes down the Dialga. Not quite. We get to the second. Now we just need to come in, hope Mewtwo doesn't have enough energy, and we might be able to walk away with a win. 1, 2. Unfortunately, they have enough energy. The Psy Strike will come in. Good game to my opponent.